Hey guys, tonight we begin with something different. Something most of us can barely imagine. We're stepping into the shattered remains of a bombed-out town during World War II. Forget the war movies with their noble sacrifices and clean heroics. The truth is uglier, messier, and infinitely more terrifying. You probably wouldn't survive a single day. So before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just become a civilian trapped in a European town that no longer exists. The buildings around you are skeletal remains of what used to be homes, shops, churches. The streets are rivers of brick and broken glass. The sky is permanently gray with smoke and ash. And somewhere in the distance, you can hear the rumble of artillery that might be 5 miles away or 500 yards. You don't know which, and that uncertainty will eat at you every single moment you're awake. Chapter 1. The morning you wake up to nothing. You wake up in what used to be a basement. The ceiling above you is actually the floor of what was once someone's living room. You can see the remnants of wallpaper, a floral pattern that's now scorched and peeling, hanging down through a crack in the floorboards. The air is thick with dust. Every breath you take coats your lungs with particles of pulverized brick, plaster, and God knows what else. Your bed is a pile of salvaged fabric. Maybe it was curtains once, or a tablecloth, or someone's winter coat. It doesn't matter now. Everything is just material for survival. You're wearing the same clothes you've worn for 3 weeks straight. They're stiff with dried sweat, dirt, and smoke residue. The fabric smells like burning. Everything smells like burning here. There's no alarm clock, no gentle sunrise streaming through windows. The windows are all gone, replaced by boards or hanging sheets or nothing at all. You wake up because your body is screaming at you. You're cold. You're hungry. Your mouth tastes like ashes and your throat is raw from breathing air that shouldn't be breathed. Let's be clear about something right away. This isn't camping. This isn't some adventure where you rough it for a weekend and then go home to a hot shower. This is your life now. This basement, these ruins, this constant state of terror disguised as routine. There's no going home because home doesn't exist anymore. You sit up and immediately your back screams in protest. You've been sleeping on concrete for months. Your spine has forgotten what a mattress feels like. Your shoulders are permanently hunched from the cold and the constant tension. You're 25 years old, but your body feels 60. The first sound you hear is water dripping somewhere in the darkness. It's rhythmic, maddening. Drip, drip, drip. It's been dripping for 2 weeks straight, and you still haven't found where it's coming from. In the old world, you'd call a plumber. In this world, you just learn to live with the sound of slowly losing your mind. You reach for your water container. It's a battered metal canteen you found in the rubble 3 days ago. There's maybe half a cup of water left. You take a small sip, just enough to wet your mouth. You don't know when you'll find more water, so every drop is precious. The water tastes metallic and slightly off, but you've learned not to think about what might be in it. Chapter 2. The shelter that barely shelters. Let me paint you a picture of your current accommodations. You're in what used to be the basement of a 3-story apartment building. The building took a direct hit from a 500-pound bomb 16 days ago. The top 2 floors are completely gone. Just gone. The ground floor is a jumbled mess of fallen beams, shattered furniture, and personal belongings that nobody will ever claim. Your basement is actually in pretty good shape, relatively speaking. The ceiling hasn't collapsed completely. Sure, there are cracks running across it like spider webs, and yes, chunks of plaster fall down randomly throughout the day, and absolutely you lie awake at night wondering if tonight's the night the whole thing comes down on your head. But it's standing. For now. There are 7 other people sharing this basement with you. Old Mrs. Kowalski, who used to run the bakery on the corner. The 2 Hoffman boys, teenagers who haven't spoken a word since their parents died in the initial bombing. A young mother named Anna with her infant daughter who cries constantly from hunger. A man you only know as Joseph who may or may not have been a soldier at some point. And the elderly doctor, Dr. Fisher, who has no medical supplies but still tries to help when people get hurt. The space is maybe 20 feet by 30 feet. That's 600 square feet for 8 people living on top of each other 24 hours a day. There's no privacy, no personal space. You hear every cough, every cry, every whispered prayer in the darkness. The walls are lined with whatever people manage to salvage. Bags of belongings that mean nothing and everything. Photographs of people who might be dead. Clothes that will never be clean again. Pots and pans for cooking food you don't have. It's a museum of a life that ended but whose ghosts still linger in these pathetic remnants. The entrance to the basement is through what used to be the back door of the building. Now it's just a hole in the rubble that you've tried to camouflage with debris. You don't want anyone to know you're down here. Not the soldiers who sometimes patrol looking for able-bodied men to conscript or shoot. Not the desperate people who might kill you for your water or food. Not the authorities who might decide this building is too dangerous and force you to relocate to some official shelter that's probably worse. The temperature in the basement is always wrong. In summer, it's stifling, airless, suffocating. In winter, it's so cold you can see your breath even during the day. Right now, it's November. The cold is starting to creep in through every crack, every gap in the masonry. You have one thin blanket. One. And you share it with whoever seems closest to freezing to death on any given night. There's a corner of the basement that serves as the toilet. It's literally just a corner with a bucket. The bucket gets emptied once a day when someone works up the courage to venture outside. The smell is indescribable. Imagine the worst public restroom you've ever encountered, then multiply it by 100 and add the fact that you can never escape it. You eat, sleep, and breathe in this smell. Chapter 3. The water crisis that never ends. Here's something they don't tell you about bombed-out towns. Water becomes more valuable than gold, more precious than food, more important than shelter, because you can survive for weeks without food, but only 3 days without water. And in a town where every pipe is shattered, every well is contaminated, and every source is suspect, those 3 days feel very, very close. You need to find water today. Your canteen is almost empty, and Mrs. Kowalski is showing signs of severe dehydration. Her lips are cracked and bleeding. Her eyes are sunken. She's not going to make it another day without water. The nearest known water source is the bombed-out church 6 blocks away. 6 blocks doesn't sound like much, does it? In the old world, that's a pleasant 10-minute walk. Here, it's an odyssey through hell that might get you killed. But you don't have a choice. The human body doesn't negotiate. You prepare for your water run like you're preparing for battle. You check the street outside through a crack in the debris. You listen for sounds of activity. Engines, voices, gunfire. The street seems quiet, but that means nothing. It was quiet yesterday morning when that family 2 buildings over got caught by a sniper. Their bodies are still lying in the street. Nobody's dared to retrieve them. You take your canteen and a second container. An old paint bucket. It's not clean, but nothing is clean anymore. You've given up on clean. You'll settle for wet. You wrap a dark scarf around your head and shoulders. Anything bright is a target. Everything you wear is gray, brown, or black. The colors of rubble and ash. The journey to the church is a nightmare of choices. Do you take the main street, which is faster but more exposed? Or do you thread through the ruins of buildings, which is slower but offers more cover? There's no right answer. People die on both routes every day. You choose the buildings. You climb through a gap in what used to be someone's kitchen. There's still a table set for dinner, covered in dust and debris. For plates, for glasses, for sets of silverware. You wonder if the family made it out or if they're buried somewhere under the tons of rubble that used to be the upper floors. The floor is unstable beneath your feet. Boards crack and shift with every step. You move slowly, testing each footfall before committing your weight. One wrong step and you'll plunge through into the basement below. If you're lucky, you'll break a leg. If you're unlucky, you'll be impaled on the jagged wreckage below. You make it through 3 buildings before you hear it. The whistle, that distinctive sound that freezes your blood and empties your bowels simultaneously. Incoming artillery. You have maybe 3 seconds to react. You dive into the nearest doorway, which happens to be a collapsed bathroom. You curl into the smallest ball possible, hands over your head, mouth open so the pressure blast doesn't rupture your eardrums. This is what they taught you in the early days, back when there were still officials around giving out survival tips. The shell hits somewhere close, maybe 100 yards away. The ground shakes like an earthquake. Dust and debris rain down from every surface. Your ears ring with a high-pitched whine that drowns out everything else. For a moment, you genuinely can't tell if you're injured or not. Your body is so flooded with adrenaline that pain doesn't register immediately. You do a quick check. Fingers, toes, arms, legs. Everything moves. No blood that you can see. You're okay. You're alive. For now. You wait 5 minutes before moving, giving time for any follow-up shells. Sometimes they fire in clusters, waiting for people to emerge from cover before sending the next round. The silence returns, if you can call it silence. Your ears are still ringing, but there's no more whistling, no more explosions. You continue toward the church. Chapter 4. The food that isn't food. Let's talk about eating in a bombed-out town. Actually, let's not call it eating. Let's call it fuel intake, because that's all it is. The concept of a meal, of enjoying food, of actually tasting what you consume is from another lifetime. Your diet consists of whatever you can find, scavenge, trade, or steal. Today, that means half a can of condensed milk you found in a collapsed grocery store 2 days ago. The can is dented and the label is burned off, but the seal seems intact. Seems. You hope. Eating a bad can of food here means dysentery, and dysentery means you lose more water than you can possibly replace, and that means death. You also have 3 potatoes. They're sprouting and slightly moldy, but they're potatoes. You found them in a cellar 4 blocks away, buried under the body of the family who probably died trying to protect them. You try not to think about that as you brush off the dirt. Dirt is the least of your concerns. The bread situation is grim. There's no bread. There are no bakeries. There are no ovens. There's no flour. Sometimes, if you're incredibly lucky, someone will trade a chunk of hardtack, that rock-hard military biscuit that's barely edible but contains calories. You haven't seen hardtack in 6 days. Here's what a meal looks like. You take 1 potato. You can't cook it because fires attract attention and you have no fuel anyway. You eat it raw. You cut it into thin slices with a knife that's more rust than metal, and you chew each slice slowly, trying to make it last, trying to trick your stomach into thinking it's getting more than it is. The potato tastes like dirt and desperation. It's mealy and slightly bitter. But it's food, and food is life, so you chew and you swallow and you try not to think about the restaurant you used to go to on Fridays, the one that served that amazing roasted chicken with herbs and lemon. There's no roasted chicken here. No herbs. No lemon. There's no variety, no nutrition, no satisfaction. You're not eating to live well. You're eating to not die today. That's the bar. Don't die today. The condensed milk is a luxury. You allow yourself 1 spoonful. The sweetness is almost overwhelming. Your taste buds have forgotten what sugar is. The milk coats your mouth, thick and rich and completely foreign. You close your eyes and for just a moment you're somewhere else. Somewhere with clean sheets and warm coffee and Sunday mornings. Then reality crashes back. You're in a basement with 7 other starving people, and that spoonful of condensed milk is the best thing that will happen to you all week. The hunger is constant. It's not the dramatic stomach-growling hunger of missing lunch. It's a deep, gnawing ache that never leaves. Your body is slowly consuming itself. You can feel your ribs. You can see the bones in your wrists. Your face is gaunt, your eyes sunken. When you look in the fragment of mirror you found in the ruins, you don't recognize yourself. Anna's baby is crying again. The infant is starving. Anna is starving, which means she can't produce milk, which means the baby is starving worse. You watch Anna try to nurse her daughter, both of them crying, both of them desperate. There's nothing you can do. Your half can of condensed milk won't save them. Nothing will save them. Dr. Fisher says the baby won't last another week without proper nutrition. He says it clinically, matter-of-fact, the way you'd comment on the weather. Because what else can he say? What comfort can he offer when comfort is a fantasy? You've learned to suppress your hunger. You've taught your body that the gnawing ache is just background noise now, like the sound of distant artillery or the smell of smoke. It's always there, but you can't let it dominate your thoughts or you'll go mad. Chapter 5. The bombs that keep falling. The bombing isn't over. That's the thing people don't understand. The big attack that destroyed the town, that leveled the buildings and killed thousands, that was weeks ago. But the bombing continues. Every day. Sometimes multiple times a day. Sometimes at night when you're trying to sleep. The war moves on, but you're stuck in its wake, still getting hit by the aftershocks. Today, it's late afternoon. You're back in the basement after your water run to the church. You manage to fill both containers. The water is brownish and smells strange, but you've learned to filter it through cloth and hope for the best. Hope is really all you have. You're just settling down, allowing yourself to relax for the first time in hours. When you hear it again, the planes, the deep, droning rumble of bomber engines. Everyone in the basement freezes. The Hoffman boys grab each other. Mrs. Kowalski starts praying in Polish. Joseph moves to the corner farthest from the entrance, as if 3 extra feet will make any difference if a bomb hits. The sound gets louder. They're coming closer. You can distinguish individual engines now. For planes, maybe 5. You try to judge their altitude by the sound. Are they high up, heading somewhere else? Or are they low, lining up for another attack run on your already devastated town? The answer comes in the form of the first explosion. It's distant, maybe a mile away. Then another closer. Then another closer still. They're carpet bombing, dropping their payload in a line, methodically destroying everything in their path. And that line is heading straight toward you. You're powerless. Completely and utterly powerless. You can't run because where would you go? Every building is just as vulnerable as yours. You can't hide because you're already in a basement, already as deep as you can get. You can't fight back because you're a civilian with no weapons facing planes 30,000 feet up dropping 1,000-pound bombs. So you wait. You huddle with 7 other terrified people in a basement that might become your tomb, and you wait to see if today is the day you die. The explosions march closer. Each one is a hammer blow that shakes the earth. Dust falls from the ceiling in waterfalls. The walls crack and groan. The floor shudders. One of the support beams makes a sound like a tree about to fall. Anna is hunched over her baby, shielding the infant with her own body. Dr. Fisher has his eyes closed, lips moving silently. Mrs. Kowalski is clutching her rosary so hard her knuckles are white. Then one hits close, maybe a block away. The world turns into noise and fury. The blast wave slams into the basement like a physical force. The air pressure changes so dramatically your ears pop and then start bleeding. The candle you had burning goes out instantly. You're in complete darkness. Something heavy falls somewhere above you. You hear the groaning, crashing sound of a building dying. Not your building, you think. Please, not your building. The darkness is total, suffocating. You can't see your hand in front of your face. You can only hear explosions, falling debris, screaming, maybe from you, maybe from someone else. It's impossible to tell. It lasts forever. It lasts 30 seconds. Time becomes meaningless when you're convinced you're about to die. Then slowly the sounds fade. The explosions move away, continuing their path of destruction elsewhere. The rumble of the bomber engines grows distant. The dust begins to settle, though you're still breathing it in with every ragged gasp. Someone finds matches. A candle flickers to life. The dim light reveals faces painted with dust and terror. Everyone is shaking. The Hoffman boys are sobbing silently. Anna is checking her baby frantically, looking for injuries. The infant is screaming, which is actually a good sign. Dead babies don't scream. You do a damage assessment. The ceiling is still there, though there are new cracks spiderwebbing across it. One corner has partially collapsed, filling that section with rubble. The entrance is still accessible. The walls are still standing. You survived. Again. But here's the thing about surviving. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like postponement. Because the planes will come back tomorrow or the next day or next week. The bombing never really stops. It just takes breaks. Chapter 6. The diseases that thrive in ruins. Welcome to the medical reality of a bombed-out town. Forget antibiotics. Forget sterile equipment. Forget trained medical professionals. What you have is Dr. Fisher, who was a doctor 60 years ago and whose hands shake so badly he can barely hold a bandage. What you have is hope and prayer and the desperate belief that the human body can heal itself if you just give it time. The diseases here aren't the dramatic ones from movies. Nobody has the plague or cholera or anything with a name that sounds important. What you have is slower, more insidious. Dysentery from contaminated water. Typhoid from poor sanitation. Respiratory infections from breathing dust and smoke for months. Infected wounds from cuts and scrapes that can't be properly cleaned. One of the Hoffman boys has a fever. It started 3 days ago as just a slight warmth to his forehead. Now he's burning up, delirious, talking to people who aren't there. Dr. Fisher says it might be typhoid, or typhus, or just an infection from that cut he got last week when he fell on some broken glass. Without the ability to test, without access to medicine, every illness is a mystery that might end in death. The boy lies on his pile of rags, shivering despite the fever. His brother sits beside him, holding his hand, helpless. There's nothing anyone can do except wait and see if his body can fight off whatever is eating him alive from the inside. Respiratory problems are universal down here. Everyone has a cough. Some are mild, just a periodic clearing of the throat. Others are deep, racking coughs that bring up blood and leave the person gasping for air. The air quality in this basement is poison. You're breathing pulverized building materials, smoke particles, and God knows what else with every breath. Mrs. Kowalski has a cough that's getting worse. It started 2 weeks ago and has progressed from occasional to constant. She coughs so hard sometimes that she vomits. Dr. Fisher thinks it might be tuberculosis. Tuberculosis, that disease from history books, that disease from the 1800s. But in this basement, with no ventilation and everyone packed together, it's not history. It's reality. The sanitation situation makes every illness worse. That bucket in the corner is a breeding ground for bacteria. The water you drink is questionable at best, poisonous at worst. The food you scavenge might have been contaminated before you found it. Every meal, every drink, every breath is a potential vector for disease. Then there are the wounds. In a place where every surface is sharp edges and unstable rubble, injuries are constant. You have a cut on your hand from yesterday. It's not deep, barely worth noticing in the old world. Here, it's a death sentence waiting to happen. You cleaned it as best you could with that questionable water, wrapped it in a strip of cloth that probably isn't clean. Now you watch it obsessively for signs of infection. The signs of infection are all too familiar down here. Redness, swelling, heat. The skin around the wound turns angry and tight. Then comes the pus. Thick, yellow, stinking pus that means your body is fighting a battle it's probably going to lose. Then the red lines start creeping up your arm as the infection spreads. Then the fever. Then the delirium. Then death. Joseph has a wound on his leg that's infected. You can smell it from across the basement. The smell of rot and decay. Dr. Fisher has told him the leg needs to come off if he wants to live. Without anesthetic. Without proper tools. Without any way to prevent further infection from the amputation itself. Joseph has chosen to take his chances with the infection. Most people would make the same choice. Mental health is a joke concept here. Everyone has what they'd probably call PTSD in a world with psychologists and diagnoses. The Hoffman boys haven't spoken in weeks. Anna rocks her dying baby and hums lullabies that sound like funeral dirges. Mrs. Kowalski talks to her dead husband like he's still alive. You yourself have vivid nightmares when you can sleep, and when you're awake, you sometimes see movement in the shadows that isn't there. Dr. Fisher says the mind can only take so much trauma before it breaks. He says everyone down here is broken in some way. The only question is whether you're broken in a way that lets you keep functioning or broken in a way that shuts you down completely. Chapter 7. The cold that cuts to the bone. November in a bombed-out town means winter is coming. In the old world, that meant pulling out your coat and complaining about the weather. Here, it means people are going to freeze to death. Not might, will. It's not a possibility. It's a certainty. The only question is how many and who. The temperature has been dropping steadily for the past 2 weeks. During the day, it's maybe 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Uncomfortable but manageable. At night, it drops to near freezing. And it's only November. December, January, February are still ahead. Months where the temperature can drop to 10 or 20 degrees. Months that will kill anyone without proper shelter, proper clothing, and proper heat. You have none of those things. Your clothing situation is grim. You're wearing everything you own. A thin shirt, a worn jacket, pants with holes in the knees. No socks because your last pair rotted off your feet 2 weeks ago. Shoes that are more hole than shoe. This is your winter wardrobe. This is what stands between you and hypothermia. The basement offers some protection from the wind, but not from the cold. Cold seeps through stone and concrete like water. It rises from the floor and falls from the ceiling. It finds every gap in your clothing and drives straight into your core. Your fingers are numb. Your toes are numb. Your face aches from the constant exposure. The idea of heat is a fantasy. Fire requires fuel, and fuel doesn't exist. You've burned everything burnable already. Every scrap of wood, every piece of furniture, every book and paper. The surrounding ruins have been picked clean by other desperate people with the same idea. There's nothing left to burn. Even if you had fuel, fire is dangerous. Smoke draws attention. The soldiers patrol looking for signs of habitation, and smoke is the easiest sign to spot. Light from a fire is visible from miles away at night. Fire in an unstable building made of rubble and shattered gas lines is asking for an explosion or collapse. So you freeze. You huddle with the others for warmth. Human bodies pressed together, sharing body heat, trying to create a tiny pocket of warmth in an ocean of cold. It's uncomfortable and intimate and necessary. You've learned to ignore the awkwardness of sleeping pressed against strangers. The nights are the worst. The temperature drops, and with it, your hope. You lie awake shivering, teeth chattering, wondering if you'll make it to morning. You've heard about people dying from hypothermia in their sleep. Their body temperature drops so low that their heart just stops. They don't wake up. One moment they're sleeping, the next they're dead. You check on everyone periodically through the night. Are they breathing? Are they still warm? The Hoffman boy with the fever is actually lucky in a twisted way. His body is producing heat. He's one of the warmest people in the basement. His brother sleeps pressed against him, using the fever as a heater. Morning brings a tiny bit of warmth from the weak November sun, but not much. You move to try to generate heat. You do exercises, jumping jacks in place, push-ups, anything to get your blood moving. But exercise requires calories, and calories require food, and food is something you don't have enough of. It's a vicious cycle. Your fingers are cracked and bleeding from the cold. The skin has split open in multiple places, painful little fissures that never heal because they're constantly re-exposed to the cold. Your lips are the same way, cracked, bleeding, painful to move. You'd kill for chapstick. Actually kill for it. Frostbite is a real concern. Dr. Fisher checks everyone's extremities daily. He's looking for the signs. Skin that's gone white and waxy. Fingers or toes that don't hurt anymore because the nerve endings are dead. Once frostbite sets in deep enough, amputation is the only option. An amputation here means death from infection. Anna's baby is suffering from the cold. The infant is too young to regulate its body temperature effectively. Anna keeps the baby wrapped against her chest, skin to skin, trying to keep it warm with her own body heat. But Anna is starving and cold herself. She doesn't have enough warmth to share. Chapter 8. The hygiene that doesn't exist. Let's have an honest conversation about cleanliness in a bombed-out town. Actually, let's skip the euphemisms. There is no cleanliness. There is only degrees of filth. You are covered in grime, dirt, smoke residue, dried sweat, and other substances you try not to think about. You smell like something that should be buried, and everyone else smells exactly the same. You haven't bathed in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Think about that. The last time you were truly clean was before the main bombing, back when the water still ran and you could use a shower like a normal human being. Since then, The closest you've come to bathing is using a damp cloth to wipe your face and hands when water was available to spare. Your hair is matted and greasy. You could probably sculpt it into different shapes and it would hold. It's so dirty that it's changed color. Whatever shade it used to be, it's now a uniform grayish-brown. You haven't seen a comb or brush in weeks. You just ignore your hair and hope it doesn't become a breeding ground for lice. Too late. You have lice. Everyone has lice. The tiny parasites have found paradise in this basement full of unwashed humans packed together. You can feel them crawling on your scalp. You catch them sometimes and crush them between your fingernails. But for every one you kill, there are hundreds more. The itching is maddening, constant, inescapable. Your teeth are in terrible shape. You haven't brushed them in weeks because there's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no reason to care when survival is the only priority. Your mouth tastes like decay. Your breath could strip paint. Your gums bleed when you chew the hard food you occasionally find. One of your molars is loose, wiggling in its socket, probably going to fall out soon from the combination of poor nutrition and poor hygiene. The skin situation is a horror show. You have sores and rashes in places you didn't know could develop sores and rashes. The combination of dirt, sweat, and constant friction from your filthy clothes has created perfect conditions for skin infections. You have a rash on your inner thighs that burns and itches simultaneously. You have open sores on your ankles where your terrible shoes rub. You have what might be a fungal infection between your toes. Let's talk about menstruation because it's happening and it's a nightmare. The women in the basement have to deal with their periods with no pads, no tampons, no clean cloth, no running water. They use rags that they try to clean when water is available, which is almost never. The smell is distinctive and unavoidable. The humiliation is crushing. But there's no privacy and no alternatives, so everyone pretends not to notice. The toilet situation has already been mentioned, but it deserves more detail because it's so central to the daily misery. That bucket in the corner is everyone's bathroom. Men, women, and children all use the same bucket. There's no door, no curtain, no privacy. You just go to the corner, do your business while everyone politely looks away, and hope that nobody's watching. Emptying the bucket is a job nobody wants, but everyone has to share. You take turns. When it's your turn, you carry the sloshing bucket up through the ruins to find somewhere to dump it. You're carrying human waste through streets that might have snipers, might be under observation, might be about to get shelled. And you're doing it while trying not to spill any on yourself because if you do, there's no way to clean it off. Vermin are everywhere. Rats the size of cats scurry through the ruins, fat and bold from feeding on the dead. They've learned that humans in bombed-out towns are weak and desperate. They barely bother to hide. You've woken up to find a rat sniffing at your face, looking to see if you're dead yet. You shoo it away and it leaves reluctantly, like you're the intruder. Flies are a constant presence. Where there's decay, there are flies. Where there are dead bodies left in the street, there are clouds of flies. They land on you, on your food, on everything. You've given up trying to keep them away. You just eat while they crawl over your hands and hope you're not ingesting too many eggs. The doctor tried to maintain some standards of hygiene at first. He insisted everyone wash their hands before eating. He tried to keep the toilet area separate from the living area. He tried to organize regular cleaning sessions. But cleaning requires water and energy and supplies, none of which are available. His standards slipped. Everyone's standards slipped. Now you just accept that everything is filthy and try to survive anyway. Chapter 9. The bodies nobody removes. Death is everywhere in a bombed-out town, but not in a dramatic, cinematic way. There are no dignified funerals, no proper burials, no closure. There are just bodies. Bodies in the streets. Bodies in the rubble. Bodies that nobody has the strength or courage to move. There's a family in the street 2 buildings down. Mother, father, and 2 children. They've been there for 8 days. You pass them every time you venture out. You've watched their decomposition in fast forward. The first day, they just looked like people sleeping. By the 3rd day, the smell started. By day 5, the bloating began. Now, on day 8, they're barely recognizable as human. The rats have been at them. So have the birds. Nobody moves them because moving bodies is dangerous. It means exposing yourself in the open street. It means using precious energy and time. It means dealing with the physical reality of a decomposing corpse, which is both disgusting and potentially disease-spreading. So the bodies stay where they fell. You've become desensitized to death in a way that would have horrified you a few months ago. You step over bodies. You search bodies for useful items. You look at a dead person and your first thought isn't sadness or shock. It's whether they have shoes in better condition than yours or if they might have food in their pockets. There's a woman in the ruins of the building next door. You can see her arm sticking out from under a fallen beam. You know she's been there for at least 3 weeks because you remember when that beam fell. The arm has gone through all the stages of decomposition. Fresh, then bloated, then mummified by the dry air. It's just part of the landscape now. A landmark. Go past the building with the arm sticking out, then turn left. The smell of death is constantly in the air. It mixes with the smell of smoke and cordite and sewage to create an odor that you'll never forget for the rest of your life. Every breath carries the taste of decay. You've learned to breathe through your mouth when passing certain areas, but that just means you taste the death instead of smelling it. Anna's baby died yesterday. The infant just stopped breathing in the middle of the night. No drama, no final gasp. One moment alive, the next dead. Anna held the tiny body for 6 hours before Dr. Fisher gently convinced her to let go. Now the baby is wrapped in a piece of cloth and placed in the corner of the basement. Nobody has suggested what to do with it. Nobody wants to address it. So it sits there, a tiny bundle that represents the death of hope. Joseph died this morning. The infection in his leg finally won. He went septic. His last hours were agony. Fever dreams and screaming and begging for water that wouldn't help. When he finally died, it was almost a relief. Now his body is in the other corner. 2 bodies in the basement with you. 2 corpses sharing your living space because nobody has figured out how to move them safely. The mass graves started weeks ago. Official crews came through in the early days, collecting bodies, trying to maintain some semblance of order. They dug huge pits and filled them with hundreds of corpses. No names, no markers, no ceremony. Just pile the bodies in, cover them with dirt, and move on to the next pit. Those crews are long gone. Now bodies just accumulate. The town is becoming a graveyard. Future archaeologists will have a field day here. Future historians will write papers about the death toll. But right now, you're living in it, breathing it, stepping over it every day. You've seen children dead in the streets. That never gets easier, no matter how desensitized you become. A small body, a child's face frozen in fear or pain. It breaks something in you every time. But you can't stop to grieve. You can't break down. You can't afford the luxury of feeling the full weight of the horror because if you do, you'll collapse and become the next body in the street. The ghosts are real here, not in a supernatural sense, but in the way that every building is haunted by the people who used to live there. You walk through ruined apartments and see the evidence of lives interrupted. A dinner table set for a meal that was never eaten. Children's toys scattered in a bedroom. Family photos on a mantle in a house with no roof. The ghosts of normal life. Chapter 10. The bombs that haven't exploded yet. Here's something terrifying that keeps you up at night. Unexploded ordnance. UXO. Bombs that fell but didn't detonate. They're everywhere. In the rubble. Under the streets. Inside buildings. Waiting. Patient. Deadly. Estimates suggest that 10 to 15% of all bombs dropped fail to explode on impact. In a town that took thousands of bombs, that means there are hundreds of unexploded bombs scattered throughout the ruins. Hundreds of 1,000-pound explosives just sitting there, unstable, sensitive to disturbance, ready to go off at any moment. You've seen them. Everyone has. There's one in the crater 3 streets over. A massive 500-pound bomb, partially buried, its tail fins sticking up like a metal flower. Nobody goes near it. You make a wide detour whenever you have to pass that area. But here's the thing about unexploded bombs. They're not always visible. Sometimes they're buried under rubble. Sometimes they're inside buildings. Sometimes you don't know they're there until you step on one. A family died last week from an unexploded bomb. They were trying to salvage materials from a collapsed building. probably looking for wood to burn or metal to trade. They must have disturbed a bomb that was buried in the rubble. The explosion was massive. It brought down what was left of the entire building. There were no survivors. There were barely remains to recover. Every time you walk through ruins, every time you move debris, every time you search for supplies, you're playing Russian roulette with unexploded ordnance. That piece of rubble you're about to move might be resting on a 500-pound bomb. That basement you're thinking of sheltering in might have a shell that failed to detonate sitting in the corner. The smaller ordnance is almost worse because it's harder to spot. Grenades, mortar shells, anti-personnel bomblets. These things are designed to be hard to see, and they're scattered everywhere. You watch your step constantly, looking for the telltale signs. Disturbed earth, metal glinting in the rubble, anything that doesn't look quite right. Children are especially vulnerable. Before the mass evacuations, there were kids who thought the unexploded ordnance was interesting, who wanted to poke it or take it apart or play with it. Those children are dead now. Word spreads fast when a kid gets blown up playing with what they thought was a toy. The bombs degrade over time, which makes them more dangerous, not less. The chemicals inside become unstable. The detonators become sensitive. A bomb that's been sitting for weeks is more likely to go off from a gentle touch than it was when it first fell. You've developed an instinct for danger, a sixth sense that screams at you when something doesn't feel right. Sometimes you'll be walking through ruins and suddenly you'll just know. There's something wrong here, something dangerous nearby. You don't question it. You just leave. That instinct has kept you alive so far. There's no bomb disposal squad. No experts carefully defusing the ordnance. The soldiers who occasionally patrol don't bother with unexploded bombs. They just mark them if they're obvious and move on. The bombs will either go off eventually or they won't. Either way, it's not their problem. Chapter 11. The buildings that want to fall. Every building in this town is a death trap. Every single one. The bombing destroyed the structural integrity of everything. Buildings that look stable aren't. Buildings that look dangerous might be okay. There's no way to tell until you're inside, and by then it might be too late. The building you're sheltering in makes sounds constantly. Groaning, creaking, little pops and cracks as materials shift and settle. Sometimes you hear what sounds like footsteps above you, but it's just debris sliding across unstable floors. The building is slowly collapsing in ultra-slow motion, and you're living inside it waiting to see if today's the day it finishes the job. Partial collapses happen daily somewhere in town. You'll hear a rumbling crash and know that another building just gave up. Maybe it was empty. Maybe it was full of people. You don't go to check. You just say a prayer and hope it wasn't anyone you knew. The walls around you are cracked. Not hairline cracks. Major structural cracks. Gaps you can see through. Places where the masonry has separated from itself. Dr. Fisher says the building is held together more by habit than by engineering at this point. The floor above you is particularly concerning. The sagging in the middle, bowing down toward the basement like it wants to join you. There's a visible curve to what should be a flat surface. Everyone avoids standing directly under the worst part of the sag. Not that it would matter. If that floor comes down, the whole building comes down, and position in the basement won't save anyone. You've learned to recognize the warning signs of an imminent collapse. A sudden increase in dust falling from the ceiling. New cracks appearing. Strange sounds. A feeling of movement beneath your feet. When you notice these signs, you get out fast and stay out until you're sure the building has stabilized. Sometimes you have no choice but to enter dangerous buildings. Maybe there's food inside. Maybe there's water. Maybe there's shelter from artillery. You do a quick structural assessment. Are the walls vertical or leaning? How much of the roof is gone? Are there fires burning inside? And then you make a decision based on incomplete information and hope you're right. There's an art to moving through unstable buildings. You stay near walls where the structure is strongest. You test each floor before committing your weight. You never run, even when you desperately want to, because running creates vibrations that could bring everything down. You keep one hand on a wall at all times so you can feel any movement. The staircases are nightmares. Most are partially destroyed, missing steps, broken railings. Sometimes the whole middle section is gone and you have to jump across gaps or find another way up. And all the time you're on the stairs, you're thinking about how much weight they're supporting, how long since anyone last used them, whether this is the moment they finally give way. Windows and doors are trouble spots. The bombing creates overpressure that blows out windows and doors, but it also warps the frames. Doors won't open or won't close. Windows shatter, but the glass stays suspended in the frame, ready to fall and slice anyone beneath. You approach every doorway and window with extreme caution. Fires are still burning in some buildings. Not dramatic blazes, but slow smoldering fires deep in the rubble that have been burning for weeks. These fires weaken whatever structure remains. They fill the area with smoke. They can suddenly flare up if they find new fuel. A building with a fire inside is a building that could collapse at any moment. Basements like the one you're in are generally safer than upper floors, but they have their own risks. If the building above collapses completely, the basement can become a tomb. You'll be buried alive under tons of rubble with no way out. Rescue is impossible because there's nobody to rescue you. You'll just die slowly in the darkness. Chapter 12. The people who remain. The town used to have a population of 30,000 people. Now there might be 500 left. Maybe fewer. It's hard to count when everyone is hiding in basements and ruins, avoiding patrols, trying to be invisible. The people who remain are a strange mix. There are the old folks like Mrs. Kowalski who couldn't evacuate because they were too frail. There are the stubborn ones who refused to leave their homes even as the bombs fell. There are the unlucky ones who were trapped when the bombing cut off escape routes. And there are the desperate ones who have nowhere else to go. You rarely see other people. Everyone stays hidden. Safer that way. Visible people are targets. Visible people attract attention from soldiers, from other desperate survivors, from anyone who might see them as a threat or a resource. When you do encounter other survivors, it's tense. Trust doesn't exist anymore. That person might be friendly or might kill you for your water. You approach each other carefully, hands visible, making non-threatening gestures. Sometimes you trade information. Sometimes you trade goods. Sometimes you just acknowledge each other's existence and move on. There's a loose community of sorts among the basement dwellers in your area. You know the people 2 buildings over. You know the family in the church ruins. You know the old man who lives in what used to be a storm drain. You check on each other occasionally. If someone goes missing, you assume they're dead and divide up their belongings. The social structure has broken down completely. There are no rules beyond survival. There are no authorities enforcing order. The strong take from the weak unless the weak are clever enough to hide what they have. Children grow up fast or don't grow up at all. Morality becomes flexible when the alternative is death. Some people have formed small groups for mutual protection and resource sharing. Your basement group of 8 is one such arrangement. You pool your findings. You take turns on dangerous tasks like water runs or scavenging. You watch out for each other, though that's more pragmatism than altruism. 8 people have a better chance than 1. Other survivors have gone the opposite direction and become solitary. They trust no one. They hoard everything. They attack anyone who comes near their territory. You avoid these people. They're dangerous and unpredictable, and they usually don't survive long anyway. The soldiers are a presence but not a constant one. They patrol sometimes, looking for males of military age to conscript or execute, looking for signs of resistance activity, looking for anything valuable to loot. When you hear soldiers, you hide. Everyone hides. The soldiers know people are here, but they don't care enough to root everyone out as long as nobody causes trouble. There are rumors of organized resistance groups operating in the ruins. Partisans, guerrilla fighters, people who are actively fighting back against whoever controls the town this week. You don't know if the rumors are true. You don't want to know. Getting associated with resistance would mean execution if caught, and you're just trying to survive, not fight a war. Sometimes you encounter the insane, people who've completely broken under the stress. They wander the ruins talking to themselves, seeing things that aren't there, acting out scenarios from before the bombing. Mrs. Kowalski is heading in that direction. She sets a place at meals for her dead husband. She has conversations with him. Everyone pretends not to notice because we're all a little insane now. Children are rare and precious. Most were evacuated before things got really bad. The few that remain are haunted creatures, old beyond their years. They don't play. They don't laugh. They scavenge alongside adults, and they've seen things that will mark them forever. The Hoffman boys are 15 and 16, but they might as well be 40. Chapter 13. The scavenging that never ends. Every day is a scavenger hunt. Not a fun treasure hunt. A desperate search for anything that might keep you alive another day. Food, water, fuel, clothing, medicine, tools. Everything is valuable. Everything is worth risking your life for because without it, you'll die anyway. The best scavenging was in the first weeks after the bombing. Buildings were freshly collapsed and hadn't been picked through yet. You could find intact canned goods, clean water in pipes, useful tools. Now, months later, everything has been picked over multiple times. The easy pickings are gone. Now you're looking for scraps. You've developed a mental map of the town based on scavenging potential. The grocery store ruins have been completely cleared. Nothing left. The residential areas still occasionally yield something useful if you're willing to dig through tons of rubble. The industrial area is dangerous but sometimes has metal tools or containers. The church has become the de facto water collection point because it has a well that still works. Today's scavenging mission is to the ruins of what used to be a hardware store. It's 6 blocks away, which means 30 minutes of careful movement through dangerous terrain. You're hoping to find a tool. Any tool. A knife would be ideal. A hammer would be useful. Even a screwdriver would be better than nothing. The journey is the same nerve-wracking experience as always. Check every corner before rounding it. Listen for sounds of other people or soldiers. Watch for signs of fresh collapse or unexploded ordnance. Move slowly and quietly. Be invisible. You reach the hardware store ruins and immediately see you're not the first person with this idea. The rubble has been disturbed. Someone else has been digging here. Recently, based on the freshness of the moved debris. You proceed cautiously. Whoever was here might still be around. Might be territorial. Might be dangerous. The store is a maze of fallen shelves and scattered inventory. Most of the useful items are gone, but you search systematically anyway. You learn to look in weird places, under heavy debris where other scavengers might have missed something, inside walls where items might have been thrown by the blast, in corners where things could have rolled. You find a screwdriver. The handle is cracked, but the metal shaft is intact. It's not much, but it's better than what you have, which is nothing. You tuck it into your jacket. A few minutes later, you find 3 rusty nails. Jackpot. Nails can be used for all sorts of things. You pocket them carefully. The search takes 2 hours. For a screwdriver and 3 nails. In the old world, you could have bought these items for maybe $3 total. Here, they might be the difference between life and death. The screwdriver can be used as a weapon, a prying tool, or to open cans. The nails can hold things together or be traded. On the way back, you spot something in the ruins of a collapsed house. A glint of glass. You investigate and find a jar of preserved vegetables. Preserved vegetables. The jar is intact, the seal unbroken. This is a treasure worth more than gold. You hide it carefully in your jacket, looking around to make sure nobody saw you find it. This is the constant moral calculation of scavenging. Do you share your find with your basement group? The jar would mean everyone gets a few bites instead of you getting a proper meal. But if you hoard it and someone finds out, you'll be ostracized or worse. You decide to share. The group kept you alive this long. You owe them. Scavenging is competitive. There are only so many resources and too many people looking for them. You've heard stories of people killing each other over a can of food. You've witnessed fights over water sources. The veneer of civilization is thin when everyone is starving. The most dangerous scavenging is inside partially collapsed buildings. The rewards can be high because these areas are harder to access, so they might not be fully picked over. But the risks are enormous. Unstable floors, hidden ordnance, sudden collapse. You do it anyway because you don't have a choice. Chapter 14. The night that swallows everything. Night in a bombed-out town is a different level of nightmare. The The sun goes down and you enter a world of total darkness, unknown dangers, and psychological torture. There's no electricity, no streetlights, no lights in windows, just absolute, suffocating darkness broken only by the occasional flash of artillery in the distance. The blackout is enforced by necessity. Any light attracts attention. Bombers navigate by looking for lights on the ground. Soldiers investigate any sign of habitation. Other survivors see light as a target to attack for resources. So when the sun sets, you sit in complete darkness. Your eyes adjust after about 30 minutes. You can make out basic shapes, the outlines of people, the difference between a wall and empty space. But that's it. No detail, no color, just vague shadows in endless black. The sounds are magnified at night. Every creak of the building sounds like an intruder. Every scurrying rat sounds like a soldier's boot. Your imagination runs wild, populating the darkness with threats both real and imagined. You know that most of what you hear is harmless, but you can't shake the fear that one of these sounds is actually dangerous. The cold is worse at night. Temperature drops and there's no sun to provide even minimal warmth. You huddle with the others, sharing body heat, trying not to think about how cold you are. The shivering is constant and exhausting. Your muscles ache from the constant tension. Sleep is almost impossible. Your mind won't quiet down. Every sound jerks you back to alertness. You drift off and then snap awake convinced you heard something. The exhaustion accumulates day after day, wearing down your ability to think clearly, to make good decisions, to care about staying alive. The Hoffman boy with the fever is worse at night. His delirium increases. He talks constantly, sometimes in German, sometimes in what sounds like made-up languages. He calls out for his mother. He screams about things only he can see. His brother tries to comfort him, but there's nothing to be done except wait for dawn. You can hear the war at night. Artillery rumbles in the distance like an endless storm. Sometimes tracer rounds arc across the sky, beautiful and deadly. Sometimes you see the flash of explosions on the horizon and count the seconds until you hear the sound, trying to estimate how far away the fighting is. Air raids are terrifying at night. You hear the planes, but you can't see them. Just the sound of engines growing louder. Then the whistling of falling bombs. Then the explosions. All in total darkness. Your brain can't process the threat properly without visual input. It just floods your system with adrenaline and leaves you shaking. The darkness plays tricks on your mind. You see movement that isn't there. Shadows that seem to shift and crawl. Your traumatized brain filling in the darkness with horrors. You know it's not real, but that doesn't make it less terrifying in the moment. Dawn is salvation. The first hint of gray light in the sky is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. It means you survived another night. It means you can see again. It means the psychological torture of darkness is over for another 12 hours. Chapter 15. The communication with nowhere. Communication with the outside world is effectively impossible. There are no phones, no mail service, no way to contact family or friends who might have evacuated. You're cut off completely, living in a bubble of destruction with no idea what's happening beyond the ruins. You don't know who's winning the war. You don't know if your country still exists. You don't know if help is coming or if the world has written this town off as a loss and moved on. The isolation is suffocating. You're a ghost in a ghost town, invisible to everyone beyond its borders. Before the bombing, you had a family, a mother in the countryside, a brother in the army, a cousin in the capital. You have no idea if any of them are alive. They have no idea if you're alive. For all you know, they think you're dead. For all they know, you are dead. Mrs. Kowalski talks about her daughter who evacuated before the main bombing. She wonders if her daughter thinks she's dead. She wonders if her daughter is trying to return to find her. She wonders if she'll ever see her daughter again. These are questions with no answers, which makes them torture. Sometimes, very rarely, someone makes it into town from the outside. A soldier on patrol, a resistance courier, a desperate person looking for lost family. These people bring scraps of information. The war is still going. The government is somewhere doing something. The Allies are advancing or retreating or static. The information is always vague and often contradictory. You've lost track of dates. What day is it? What month? You know it's November because of the cold. But which November? How long have you been in this basement? Time has become meaningless. Days blur together. Nothing marks them as distinct. Every day is the same struggle for survival. There are no radios. The few that existed were destroyed in the bombing or confiscated by soldiers. Even if you had a radio, there's no electricity to power it. Even if you had electricity, would there be anyone broadcasting? Would the broadcasts be truth or propaganda? Does it matter? You make up stories about the outside world. Maybe the war is over and nobody told you. Maybe everyone forgot about this town. Maybe help is coming tomorrow. Maybe your family is looking for you. These stories are lies, but they're comforting lies. They give you something to hope for beyond just surviving today. The lack of information breeds paranoia. Every rumor is believed. Every story is true until proven false. Someone says the Allies are liberating towns 100 miles away. Someone else says the enemy is planning to flatten every remaining building. Someone claims there's a convoy of aid trucks just days away. You don't know what to believe, so you believe everything and nothing. Chapter 16. The children who stopped being children. The Hoffman boys represent what war does to childhood. They should be in school. They should be worried about homework and friends and normal teenage things. Instead, they're sitting in a basement watching their peers die and learning that survival means abandoning everything except the bare necessities. The younger boy, the one with the fever, used to play piano. His mother was proud of his talent. He could play Chopin and Beethoven and Mozart. Now his fingers are too damaged from the cold and malnutrition to make a fist properly. Even if there was a piano, which there isn't, he couldn't play. The older boy was going to be an engineer. He was studying mathematics and physics. He had dreams of building bridges and designing buildings. Now he knows more about structural collapse than any engineering student should. He can estimate load-bearing capacities by looking at cracked walls. His education has been thoroughly practical and completely useless for any future. Before the war, these boys had friends and hobbies and futures. They played football in the street. They went to movies. They had crushes on girls in their class. Normal things. Things that seem like they happened in another lifetime to different people. The transformation happened gradually. At first, they were scared children looking to adults for protection. Then they were grieving children who had lost their parents. Then they were traumatized children trying to process horrors. Now they're something else. Not quite children. Not quite adults. Something the war created. They've seen things that no child should see. They've watched people die violently. They've handled corpses. They've killed rats for food. They've learned that adults can't protect them because adults are just as helpless. They've realized that fairness is a concept from before the world ended. The innocence left their eyes weeks ago. Now when you look at them, you see old men staring back. They've aged decades in months. The spark that makes children children has been extinguished. They're survivors now. That's all. The boy with the fever might not even survive to adulthood, but he's already outlived his childhood. There used to be more children in the town. Dozens of them. Most evacuated with their families in the early days. The ones who stayed either died in the bombings or died from disease or starvation. The Hoffman boys are some of the last remaining. You wonder what kind of adults these children will become if they survive. What does this experience do to a developing mind? How do you process this much trauma at such a young age? Will they ever be able to trust the world again? Will they ever feel safe? The older boy sometimes talks about the future. He still has hope, buried deep underneath the trauma. He talks about rebuilding, about going to university, about having a family someday. The younger boy doesn't talk about the future. He barely talks at all anymore. Chapter 17. The hope that refuses to die. Despite everything, despite the horror and death and suffering, there's still hope. It's irrational and probably foolish, but it exists. The human capacity for hope is remarkable and maybe what keeps you alive when logic says you should give up. Mrs. Kowalski's hope is that her daughter will come back for her. She believes this completely. She talks about it like it's a certainty, not a possibility. When her daughter comes, they'll leave together. When her daughter comes, everything will be okay. The fact that her daughter probably thinks she's dead and has no way to return even if she wanted to doesn't diminish Mrs. Kowalski's hope. The Hoffman boys' hope is that they'll survive to see the end of the war. They believe the war will end. They believe there will be rebuilding. They believe their lives can somehow return to normal. It's a child's hope, naive and touching and heartbreaking because you know it's almost certainly false. Anna's hope died with her baby, but she's starting to develop new hope. Hope that she might survive. Hope that she might escape this basement. Hope that someday she might have another child in a world that doesn't kill infants through starvation. It's fragile hope, easily shattered, but it's growing. Dr. Fisher's hope is more practical. He hopes to survive until the war ends so he can help rebuild. He has medical knowledge that will be valuable in reconstruction. He has experience treating trauma that will be needed. He sees a role for himself in the future, which gives him a reason to survive the present. Your own hope is harder to define. Maybe you hope to find your family. Maybe you hope the war ends. Maybe you just hope to survive one more day, and then another until eventually the days add up to a future. You don't examine your hope too closely because you're afraid of what you'll find. The hope manifests in small ways. People still try to maintain some dignity. Mrs. Kowalski insists on brushing her hair, even though she has no brush and her hair is a disaster. Dr. Fisher still addresses everyone formally. The older Hoffman boy still says please and thank you. These tiny gestures toward civilization are acts of hope that civilization might return. You find yourself planning for the future, which is an act of hope in itself. You think about what you'll do when the war ends, where you'll go, how you'll rebuild your life. These plans are probably fantasies, but they keep your mind occupied with something other than immediate survival. The darkest moments are when hope wavers, when another person dies, when another bomb falls, when the cold gets a little colder or the hunger a little sharper. In those moments, you understand why some people just give up and stop fighting to survive. The effort required to maintain hope is exhausting, but the hope comes back. It always comes back. Maybe it's instinct. Maybe it's stubbornness. Maybe it's just that humans are wired to believe tomorrow might be better even when all evidence suggests otherwise. Whatever it is, it keeps you going. Chapter 18. The rituals that maintain sanity. In a world where everything is chaos, people create rituals to maintain some sense of order and control. These rituals are arbitrary and often pointless from a survival perspective, but they're psychologically essential. They're what keeps you human instead of just a desperate animal. Mrs. Kowalski says prayers every morning and evening. The same prayers, the same timing. She kneels on the hard concrete floor and recites words in Polish that you don't understand but whose rhythm is comforting. The prayers don't make food appear or bombs stop falling, but they give her structure. Morning prayer, evening prayer. The days have markers. Dr. Fisher maintains a journal. He has a battered notebook and a pencil stub, and every evening he writes a few sentences about the day. What happened? Who's alive? What he observed. He treats this journal like a sacred duty. Someday, someone might read it and understand what happened here. The journal gives his suffering meaning. You've developed your own ritual. Every morning, you check the stability of your shelter. You examine the same cracks in the ceiling, the same support beams, the same walls. The ritual is probably useless because if the building is going to collapse, your inspection won't stop it. But the ritual gives you a sense of control. You're actively doing something about your safety, even if that something is largely symbolic. The group has communal rituals. You eat together when there's food, even if there's barely enough to share. You don't have to eat together. It would be easier to just grab whatever you find and eat it alone. But eating together is civilized. It's what humans do. It maintains the illusion that you're still part of society. There's a bedtime ritual where everyone settles into their sleeping spots in the same order every night. Mrs. Kowalski in the far corner. The Hoffman boys together on the left. Anna in the middle. Dr. Fisher near the entrance. You and Joseph, when he was alive, on the right side. This arrangement isn't necessary, but changing it would feel wrong. Chaos everywhere else, but order in sleep. Some rituals are superstitious. The older Hoffman boy never steps on cracks in the floor. He'll go out of his way to step over them. When asked, he can't explain why. It's just something he does. A small exertion of control in a world where control doesn't exist. You've noticed you touch the same wall every time you enter or leave the basement. Your hand automatically reaches out and presses against the stone. You didn't decide to do this. It just started happening. Now it feels necessary. Like if you don't touch the wall, something bad will happen. Magical thinking, but it provides comfort. The rituals around death have evolved. When someone dies, there's a moment of silence. Just a minute where everyone stops and acknowledges the loss. Then Dr. Fisher says a few words. They don't have to be religious or profound. Just an acknowledgement that this person existed and mattered. Then life continues because it has to. These rituals are fragile. They can be disrupted by a bombing or a crisis. But they always resume afterward. People need rituals. They need to believe that some things are stable and predictable even when everything else isn't. Chapter 19. The enemy you never see. There's an enemy out there. At least you assume there is. The bombs are falling, so someone must be dropping them. The artillery shells are exploding, so someone must be firing them. But you've never seen this enemy. They're an abstraction. A distant presence that wants you dead but doesn't care enough to look you in the eye while doing it. The soldiers who patrol the town aren't really your enemy. They're just soldiers, probably as miserable and scared as you are. They don't want to be here any more than you want them here. They're following orders from someone else. Someone distant. Someone who decided this town was strategically important or needed to be destroyed or whatever justification they used. You sometimes wonder about the bomber pilots. What do they think about when they release their payloads? Do they see the town below as a target on a map? Do they think about the people living in those buildings they're destroying? Probably not. Probably can't. If they thought too hard about the human cost, they couldn't do their jobs. The real enemy isn't the soldiers or the pilots. It's war itself. The machinery of violence that grinds up humans and spits out corpses. The system that decides some people's lives matter less than strategic objectives. The collective insanity that makes bombing civilians acceptable as long as you call it collateral damage. But you can't fight a concept. You can't shoot at war itself. So your anger has nowhere to go. It just sits inside you, eating away at your humanity, making you bitter and hard and broken. Sometimes you feel solidarity with the enemy soldiers. You see them patrolling and you think we're all just trying to survive. You're cold and hungry and scared, and they're probably cold and hungry and scared too. War did this to both of you. Different sides of the same nightmare. Other times, you hate them with the intensity of 1,000 suns. They have food and you don't. They have weapons and you don't. They have the power to leave and you don't. They represent everything that's wrong with this situation. And if you had a weapon and an opportunity, you might kill them just to release some of the rage. The enemy is also nature. The cold that's trying to freeze you. The hunger that's trying to starve you. The diseases that flourish in these conditions. These enemies don't care about your nationality or your politics. They'll kill you just as dead as any bomb. The enemy is time. Every day you survive is a day closer to running out of resources. Every day is a day your body weakens. Every day is a day your mind deteriorates under the stress. Time is not on your side. Chapter 20. The moment everything changes. It's been 3 months. 3 months of surviving day to day with no end in sight. 3 months of living in this basement, eating scraps, drinking questionable water, watching people die. 3 months that feel like 3 years or 3 decades or a single endless moment. Then something changes. You hear it before you understand it. A different sound in the distance. Not the usual artillery. Not the usual bombers. Something new. Engines. Many engines. Getting closer. The basement goes silent. Everyone is listening. Trying to identify the sound. Trying to determine if this is a new threat or something else. The engines get louder. They're definitely coming toward the town. Then you hear other sounds. Voices. Shouting in a language that's not the one the occupying soldiers speak. Dr. Fisher's eyes go wide. He recognizes the language. The Allies, he whispers. They're here. For a moment, nobody moves. This could be a trick. Could be a different enemy. Could be nothing. But then the sounds continue. Heavy vehicles moving through streets. Organized voices calling out. The methodical sounds of a military force that's not trying to hide. The older Hoffman boy moves to the entrance. Carefully, slowly, he peers out through the camouflaged opening. Then he turns back to the group, and for the first time in months, there's something on his face that looks like hope. It's them, he says. I can see the flags. They're liberating the town. The word liberation hangs in the air. It's almost too much to process. Liberation means the war is over here. Liberation means no more bombings. Liberation means rescue. Liberation means survival. But you've learned to be cautious. Liberation doesn't mean immediate improvement. It doesn't mean food suddenly appears or the buildings repair themselves. It just means the active hostility ends. Everything else is still a disaster. Slowly, people emerge from the basement, blinking in the daylight like nocturnal creatures. Other survivors are appearing from their hiding places too. Gaunt figures in rags, barely human, squinting at the Allied soldiers who are moving through the ruins with expressions of shock at what they're seeing. A soldier approaches your group. He's young, maybe 20. He looks at you with horror and pity. You realize what he's seeing. 8 barely living skeletons covered in filth, emerging from a hole in the rubble. You must look like concentration camp survivors. You probably are concentration camp survivors, just a different kind. The soldier starts talking, offering food, offering medical help, offering evacuation. The words wash over you without really registering. After 3 months of silence and isolation, having someone actually trying to help is overwhelming. Mrs. Kowalski collapses, just falls to the ground weeping. The soldier moves to help her, calling for a medic. The Hoffman boys stand together, holding each other, crying. Dr. Fisher is trying to explain the medical situation, the diseases, the dead in the basement, but his English is limited and he's crying too. You stand there feeling nothing. Shock maybe, or maybe you've been through so much that this moment of rescue doesn't feel real. It feels like another one of those dreams you have where everything is okay and then you wake up to the nightmare. But it's not a dream. The soldiers are real. The food they're handing out is real. The medical trucks arriving are real. The promise of evacuation is real. Somehow, against all odds, you survived. You made it to the other side. Chapter 21. The Price of Survival. The Allied forces establish a field hospital in the church. The same church where you used to collect water. Now it's full of cots and medical supplies and doctors who actually have the tools to treat the sick and wounded. They take the Hoffman boy with the fever immediately. He's septic. He needs antibiotics and 4 fluids and care that's been impossible to provide. The doctors work on him while his brother watches, terrified that after all this, his brother might still die. Mrs. Kowalski is treated for severe malnutrition and dehydration. Her cough is confirmed as tuberculosis. They start her on medication, though they warn that the damage to her lungs is permanent. She'll never breathe normally again. The price of survival. Anna is in bad shape. The doctors say she's malnourished to the point of organ damage. She needs weeks of careful feeding and medical care just to get back to a baseline of health. The trauma of losing her baby will never heal, but at least her body might. Dr. Fisher is relatively healthy, all things considered. The doctors are amazed he's survived at his age. They're more amazed at the journal he's kept. They promise to preserve it, to share it, to make sure the world knows what happened in this town. You're examined by a doctor who looks increasingly horrified as he catalogs your condition. Severe malnutrition, multiple infections, damaged lungs from breathing contaminated air, possible kidney damage from dehydration, frostbite on your toes, lice, scabies, a dozen other problems that accumulated during months of survival. The doctor asks you questions about your experiences. You try to answer, but the words won't come. How do you explain what it was like? How do you convey the reality of living in that basement, watching people die, wondering every day if it was your turn. Language feels inadequate. They feed you carefully. Too much food too fast can kill someone who's been starving. You get small portions of bland food every few hours. Tastes like heaven. Actual food. Clean food. Food that isn't moldy or questionable or scraped from the ruins. You sleep on a real cot with a real blanket in a space with other survivors. The first night, you can't sleep. The cot is too soft. The blanket is too warm. There's too much space. You're used to sleeping on concrete pressed against other people. Comfort feels wrong. The evacuations begin. Trucks arrive to take survivors to displaced persons camps. Proper camps with food and shelter and medical care. Places where you can start the long process of recovering and figuring out what comes next. But leaving is harder than you expected. That basement was hell, but it was your hell. You know every crack in that ceiling. You know the routine. You know the people. Leaving means facing a world that's moved on while you were stuck in time. Leaving means confronting a future you never planned for. You pack your few belongings. The screwdriver you found. The nails. Some scraps of fabric. A broken photograph of your family that you managed to save. These are your possessions now. Everything else is gone. Chapter 22. The return to humanity. The displaced persons camp is overwhelming. There are hundreds of survivors from different towns, different situations, all in the same state of trauma and shock. You're processed, registered, given a number and a bunk assignment. You become a statistic. The camp has food. Real food. 3 meals a day. The portions are small because they're rebuilding everyone slowly, but it's consistent and safe. You eat everything put in front of you, even though your stomach can only handle so much after months of starvation. There are showers. Actual showers with hot water and soap. The first shower is a religious experience. You watch months of grime and filth wash off your body. The water runs brown for the first 5 minutes. You scrub and scrub until your skin is raw. You emerge feeling more human than you have in months. They burn your clothes. There's no saving them. The lice infestation is too severe. You're given new clothes. They don't fit well and they're military surplus, but they're clean and intact. You put them on and feel like a different person. The medical treatment continues. They give you antibiotics for the infections. They treat the frostbite, though they say you'll probably lose 2 toes. They give you vitamins and minerals to address the malnutrition. Slowly, painfully, your body begins to recover. The psychological recovery is harder. You can't sleep without nightmares. You wake up screaming. You panic at loud noises. The smell of smoke sends you into flashbacks. You're told this is normal, that everyone from bombed-out towns has the same reactions, that it might get better with time. There's a board where people post messages looking for lost family members. You check it obsessively, looking for names you recognize, looking for messages from your family, looking for proof that anyone you knew survived. One day you see it, a message from your mother. She evacuated to the countryside before the main bombing. She's been searching for information about you. She thinks you're probably dead, but she's hoping, always hoping. You send a message back. You're alive. You survived. You'll find her as soon as you can. The relief is overwhelming and painful. She thought you were dead. You thought she might be dead. The war separated you and now you have to find your way back to each other. The Hoffman boy with the fever survives. The antibiotics save him. He's weak and will need months of recovery. But he lives. His brother cries with relief. After everything, both boys made it through. Mrs. Kowalski doesn't make it. The tuberculosis is too advanced, the damage too severe. She dies in the field hospital, surrounded by strangers, still waiting for her daughter to come. Dr. Fisher sits with her in her final moments. He tells her that her daughter is coming, that she'll be here soon. Mrs. Kowalski smiles and closes her eyes. Anna slowly begins to heal, physically at least. She talks about what comes next, about finding work, about maybe having another child someday when the world is stable again. The hope that was crushed in that basement is struggling to grow again. Let's talk about noise. Not the dramatic explosions or the terrifying whistle of incoming shells. The other sounds. The constant maddening soundtrack of life in a bombed-out town that plays 24 hours a day and slowly drives you insane. There's the dripping, always dripping, water leaking through cracks, seeping through rubble, finding its way down through layers of destruction. Drip, drip, drip. Sometimes it's close enough to see. Sometimes you just hear it echoing from somewhere in the darkness. The rhythm never changes, never stops. It becomes a metronome for your deteriorating sanity. The wind has a voice here that it never had in the intact town. It howls through shattered windows and blown-out walls. It moans through empty door frames and collapsed chimneys. Sometimes it sounds almost human, almost like crying or screaming or laughing. You know it's just wind, but your traumatized brain insists on hearing voices in it. The buildings talk, all the time. They creak and groan like living things in pain. Metal girders expanding and contracting with temperature changes make sounds like gunshots. Settling rubble creates cascades of noise that jolt you awake, convinced the ceiling is finally coming down. Loose shutters bang against walls in irregular rhythms that prevent sleep. At night, the rats are loudest. You can hear them everywhere, scurrying through walls, fighting over scraps. They're high-pitched squeaking as they communicate with each other. Sometimes you hear them gnawing on something and you try not to think too hard about what that something might be. The distant artillery creates a baseline rumble that never fully goes away. Even when there's no active bombardment of your area, you can hear fighting somewhere. It's like living next to a permanent thunderstorm. Your body is so flooded with stress hormones from the constant noise that you've stopped having a normal stress response. You're just numb. Human sounds are rare and therefore startling. A cough from across the basement makes you jump. Footsteps above ground send everyone into frozen silence. Voices in the distance mean potential danger or potential help, and you can never tell which until it's too late to react appropriately. Your own breathing is too loud. When you're trying to stay hidden, trying to be invisible, every breath sounds like a hurricane. You try to breathe quietly, and that just makes you more aware of the sound. Your heartbeat thunders in your ears. Your stomach growls, and you're convinced everyone within a mile can hear it. The silence is worse than the noise. When everything goes quiet, you know something is wrong. Silence means someone is hunting. Silence means an attack is being prepared. Silence means death is close. You've learned to fear silence more than explosions because explosions at least tell you where the danger is. There's a persistent ringing in your ears from the concussive blasts. It never fully goes away. Even in the quietest moments, there's that high-pitched whine that drowns out softer sounds. The doctors at the camp will tell you it's permanent hearing damage. You'll carry the sound for the rest of your life. Rain creates a symphony of sounds on the unstable structures, pattering on broken roof tiles, splashing into puddles in collapsed rooms, rushing through impromptu drainage channels in the rubble. Rain should be peaceful. Here it's just another layer of noise that prevents you from hearing real threats. The Hoffman boy with the fever makes sounds in his delirium, moaning, crying out, speaking in fragments that don't make sense. Sometimes he sings little pieces of songs from before, children's songs that his mother probably sang to him. The sound is heartbreaking because it reminds everyone of a world that doesn't exist anymore. Anna sometimes hums to herself, the same tune over and over. You don't know what it is. Maybe a lullaby she sang to her baby. Maybe something from her childhood. The humming is quiet and sad, and it fills the basement with grief made audible. Dr. Fisher's pen scratching in his journal is one of the few sounds that brings comfort. It's purposeful, intentional, the sound of someone creating order from chaos. Sometimes at night when you can't sleep, you just listen to him write and let the sound convince you that civilization hasn't completely died. Your own sounds have changed. Your voice is raspy from breathing bad air and not drinking enough water. You cough constantly, a dry, hacking cough that racks your whole body. Your joints crack and pop when you move from sitting too long on hard surfaces. You sound like an old person and you're 25. The silence of death is distinctive. When Joseph died, the change in the ambient sound was immediate. One less person breathing. One less person shifting position. One less heartbeat in the collective rhythm of the basement. You noticed it before anyone announced he was gone. Chapter 24. The objects that remain. The ruins are full of objects. Personal belongings scattered everywhere. Each one a tiny tragedy. A child's shoe. A wedding photograph. A set of false teeth. These things survived when their owners didn't, and now they sit in the rubble as monuments to erased lives. You've become numb to most of it. You step over broken dishes and torn books and smashed furniture without really seeing them. They're just debris, just material, just more evidence of destruction. But occasionally something catches your eye and breaks through the numbness. There's a dollhouse in the ruins 3 buildings over. It's mostly intact, protected by the way the building collapsed around it. It's a beautiful thing. Hand-painted, carefully furnished with tiny chairs and tables. Someone's father probably spent months building it. Some child probably played with it every day. Now it sits in the rubble, a perfect miniature of domestic life surrounded by the destroyed reality of actual domestic life. You found a watch last week. A nice watch, gold-plated, engraved on the back with a date and 2 initials. Probably a wedding present or an anniversary gift. The watch still works. You can hear it ticking. Someone wore this watch every day, checked the time, lived their life by its measurement. Now the watch is just another scavengeable object, and the person who wore it is probably dead. The camp has a lost and found, which is darkly funny when you think about it. People bring in items they find that seem important. Photographs, jewelry, documents. They post them on a board, hoping someone will claim them, hoping to reunite objects with their owners. Most items are never claimed because the owners are never coming back. You've kept a few things from the ruins. Not valuable things, just things that spoke to you for reasons you can't articulate. A child's drawing found in the rubble. Just stick figures and a sun and a house. The kind of drawing every child makes. You keep it folded in your pocket. When you touch it, you remember that children used to draw pictures of houses because houses were safe and permanent. There's a piano in what used to be someone's living room. The room has no walls anymore, just the floor and some support beams. But the piano is still there, covered in dust and debris, probably ruined by exposure to weather, but still recognizably a piano. You imagine someone playing it once. Family gathered around singing. Normal life. Books are everywhere. Thousands of books from destroyed libraries and personal collections. They lie in the mud, pages swollen with water, spines broken. You used to love reading. Now you use books as kindling on the rare occasions you can risk a fire. The irony isn't lost on you. Burning knowledge to stay warm. Burning stories to cook food. Clothing hangs on lines that still stretch between buildings that no longer exist. Laundry that was hung out to dry and never collected. Shirts and pants and dresses that flap in the wind like flags of surrender. They're too filthy and weather-damaged to be useful now. They're just ghosts of domestic routine. There are toys everywhere. Broken dolls with missing limbs. Toy soldiers, which is grimly appropriate. Balls that will never be thrown again. Jump ropes. Wooden blocks. Every toy is a reminder of a child who played with it. A child who might be dead or evacuated or traumatized beyond recovery. Kitchen items are common finds. Pots and pans. Dishes and cups. Silverware. You use these items now without thinking about their history. This plate you're eating from probably belonged to a family. They ate dinner on it. Celebrated birthdays with cake on it. Had normal meals with normal conversation. Now you use it to eat half a raw potato while sitting in a basement. Personal hygiene items are precious finds but also depressing. A comb with a few strands of hair still caught in it. A bar of soap, weathered and cracked but still soap. A toothbrush. These intimate objects that touched someone's body every day. Maintained their routine. Kept them human. The person is gone but the objects remain. Religious items are common. Crucifixes, rosaries, prayer books, icons. People held these items in their final moments. Prayed for salvation that didn't come. The objects survived even though prayer didn't protect their owners. You're not sure what that says about faith, but it says something. Photographs are the worst finds. Family portraits, wedding photos, pictures of children. You see these people frozen in moments of happiness and you know they're probably dead now. The disconnect between the smiling faces in the photos and the reality of what happened to them is too much. You usually bury photographs rather than scavenge them. Sometimes you find money, paper currency and coins scattered in the ruins. Money used to mean something. It represented security and options and future. Now it's just paper and metal. You can't eat it. You can't burn it effectively. You can't trade it because there's nothing to trade for. Money is worthless in a bombed-out town. Chapter 25. The choices that define you. Every day in a bombed-out town requires choices. Not big philosophical choices about the meaning of life. Small, brutal choices about survival. These choices define who you become. They show you what you're capable of. And sometimes, they show you things about yourself you wish you didn't know. The first major choice came in the early days. Stay or leave. People who chose to leave when evacuation was still possible are alive somewhere else. People who chose to stay are dead or trapped here with you. You chose to stay because you thought the bombing would be short-term. You thought you could ride it out. You were wrong. Every day since has been a consequence of that choice. Food creates impossible choices. You find a can of food in the ruins. Enough for one person for one day or 8 people for one meal. Do you keep it and eat well for once? Or share it and watch it disappear into the collective hunger without making a real difference? You chose to share that time. The next time you find food, you might not. The water choice is constant. You have a cup of water. You're desperately thirsty. But so is the person next to you. Do you drink it all? Share it evenly? Give it to the person who seems sickest? There's no right answer. Someone goes thirsty no matter what you choose. Medical supplies are the cruelest choices. Dr. Fisher has limited bandages and antiseptic. 2 people are injured. One injury is minor but will get infected without treatment. One injury is severe and might not heal even with treatment. Who gets the supplies? Do you waste resources on the person who might die anyway? Or do you save them for someone with better odds? The choice about Joseph's leg was impossible. Amputate without anesthesia or pain control, creating agony and probable infection and possible death from the amputation itself? Or let the infection spread and guarantee death but a less immediately horrific death? Joseph chose to refuse amputation. Dr. Fisher respected that choice. Joseph died. Would amputation have saved him? Nobody knows. When you find items while scavenging, you choose what to take. You can only carry so much. Every item you take means another item you leave behind. Take the knife that could be useful but heavy, or take the lighter blanket that offers comfort but less utility. These choices seem small, but they add up to survival or death. The choice to help others versus help yourself is constant. You see someone struggling with something too heavy to move alone. Helping them costs you energy you can't spare and time you don't have. But refusing to help makes you the kind of person who doesn't help. You're still trying to be the kind of person who helps. It's getting harder every day. Risk assessment is a choice you make constantly. This building looks unstable but might have food inside. Do you enter and risk collapse? Or do you play it safe and stay hungry? This route is faster but more exposed. That route is safer but uses more energy. Every movement is a calculated gamble. The choice of what to believe is harder than it seems. Someone tells you the war will be over next week. Do you believe them and allow yourself hope? Or do you assume it's a lie and protect yourself from disappointment? Hope is dangerous because it hurts more when it's crushed. You chose to keep the photograph you found. Someone's family photo. You could have left it or buried it respectfully. But you kept it. You look at it sometimes. These strangers become a stand-in for your own family. You imagine their lives. Create stories about them. It's not healthy, but it gives you something to focus on besides your own misery. The choice of how much humanity to maintain is ongoing. Do you keep saying please and thank you when society has collapsed? Do you maintain hygiene standards even when it's nearly impossible? Do you help bury the dead even though it's dangerous and exhausting? Every choice to maintain civilization costs something. Every choice to abandon it costs something too. Anna faced an impossible choice with her baby. Keep trying to feed it and watch it slowly starve? Or give it to someone else who might have better resources? She chose to keep her baby. The baby died anyway. She'll live with that choice forever, wondering if a different choice would have saved her child. It wouldn't have, but she'll wonder. When you encounter other survivors, you choose how much to trust them. Share information about resources, keep secrets, form alliances, stay isolated. Every interaction could be mutually beneficial or could get you killed. You've become suspicious of everyone because suspicion keeps you alive. The choice of whether to fight back is theoretical but persistent. If soldiers come, do you resist or comply? Resistance probably means death. Compliance might mean conscription or execution. There's no good option. You haven't had to make this choice yet. You hope you never do. You choose what to remember and what to forget. The face of the first dead person you saw. The sound of Anna's baby crying from hunger. The smell of Joseph's infected leg. Your brain wants to forget these things, wants to protect you from the trauma. But you choose to remember because forgetting feels like erasing them. They existed. They mattered. Remembering is how you honor that. Chapter 26. The barter economy of desperation. Money means nothing here, but value still exists. The bombed-out town has developed an informal economy based on barter and desperate need. What people will trade for basic necessities would shock you if you weren't living it. Water is the most valuable commodity. Clean water is worth its weight in gold. Literally. You've seen someone trade a gold wedding ring for 3 liters of questionable water. The ring represented a marriage, a commitment, a life before. The water represented 3 more days of life. The choice was easy. Food is second only to water. A can of beans can be traded for almost anything. You've seen people trade family heirlooms for a moldy loaf of bread. A photograph of their grandmother for a handful of rice. The photographs can't be eaten. The heirlooms can't sustain life. Sentiment is a luxury nobody can afford. Medicine and medical supplies are incredibly valuable if you can find them. A bottle of aspirin is worth a week's food. Bandages can be traded for shelter. Antibiotics, if you somehow find them, are worth literally anything the other person has. Life-saving medicine commands life-changing prices. Tools have significant value. A working knife is a treasure. A hammer or screwdriver can be traded for food. Rope is valuable. Containers for carrying water are precious. Anything that helps with survival tasks commands respect in the trading economy. Information is a commodity. Someone knows where there's a water source. Someone else knows which buildings are most stable for shelter. Someone saw soldiers patrolling a certain area. This information can be traded for other information or for goods. Knowledge keeps you alive. The barter negotiations are always tense. Nobody trusts anyone. You meet in neutral ground, both parties wary. You show what you have. They show what they have. You negotiate. The whole time you're wondering if they'll try to rob you. They're wondering the same thing. Sometimes the trades end in violence. The exchange rates are arbitrary and brutal. What's valuable changes based on immediate need. In summer, water is worth more because of heat and dehydration. In winter, fuel and warm clothing become more valuable. During bombardment, nobody trades because going out is too dangerous. After bombardment, prices spike because everyone needs to replace what was destroyed. You've made trades you're not proud of. Traded items you know belong to dead people. Items that should have been left with their owners or buried respectfully. But survival doesn't care about respect. You needed what the other person had more than you needed to honor the dead. There's a man who controls the only reliable water source within walking distance. The church well. He charges for access. Not money. He wants food or tools or favors. He's created a monopoly on the most essential resource and he's exploiting it. Everyone hates him, but everyone pays because the alternative is death from dehydration. Women face unique and horrible trade dynamics. Some are approached with offers that make your skin crawl. Men offering food or protection in exchange for sexual favors. Most women refuse. Some don't have the luxury of refusal when it's a choice between that or watching their children starve. The sexual economy of war zones is a horror nobody talks about. You've learned to hide your valuables. Never show everything you have. Never let people know what resources you possess. If someone knows you have 3 cans of food, they might kill you for them. Better to appear as desperate as everyone else. The trades happen in whispers and shadows. You meet someone, quick conversation about what you need and what you have. Make the exchange fast. Get away before anyone else notices. Being known as someone with tradable goods makes you a target. Trust is the rarest commodity and impossible to trade for. You don't trust the people you trade with. They don't trust you. But you need what they have and they need what you have, so you suspend disbelief long enough to make the exchange. Then you watch your back until you're safely hidden again. Some people have nothing to trade but labor. They offer to do dangerous scavenging runs for others in exchange for a share of whatever they find. It's a terrible deal, but it's better than nothing. Dr. Fisher has been offered this arrangement because he's too old to make risky runs himself. He refuses to exploit people that way. The psychological cost of the barter economy is high. Every trade reminds you of what you've lost. You trade items that used to be gifts or treasures. You trade parts of your past to extend your future. Each transaction is a small death of who you used to be. Children learn the economy fast. The Hoffman boys understand value now. They know what can be traded and for what. They've lost the innocence of not having to think about economic survival. They negotiate trades with the hardness of seasoned merchants. They're teenagers acting like survival experts because that's what the war made them. Chapter 27. The memories that won't fade. Your mind keeps trying to escape the present by diving into the past. Memories surface without warning, vivid and painful in their contrast to current reality. These memories are both comfort and torture. They remind you that life wasn't always like this. They also remind you of exactly how much you've lost. You remember Sunday mornings before the war, sleeping late, the smell of coffee brewing, your mother making breakfast, sitting at a table with actual tablecloth, eggs and bread and butter, the newspaper, conversation about nothing important, the luxury of boredom, the safety of routine. Food memories are the cruelest. You remember the taste of things that don't exist anymore. Fresh bread from the bakery, still warm, with butter melting into it. Roasted chicken with crispy skin. Chocolate. Fruit that was actually ripe and sweet. Your mouth waters at these memories even though you know they're torture. You remember being clean, really clean, taking a long bath, using actual soap and shampoo. The feeling of putting on fresh clothes. Your hair smelling like lavender. Your skin soft. These sensory memories are so strong you can almost feel them. Then you come back to reality and you're covered in filth in a basement. You remember going to the cinema, sitting in the dark with other people all watching the same screen. The smell of popcorn, the anticipation of the movie starting, escaping into a story for 2 hours, coming out afterward and discussing what you watched. Entertainment as a concept seems like something from another civilization. The memory of your last normal day haunts you. You didn't know it was your last normal day. Nobody ever does. You went to work, complained about the heat, had lunch with a colleague, went home. Normal things. If you had known the bombs were coming, would you have done anything differently? Probably not. What could you have done? You remember the sound of laughter, actual laughter, people genuinely happy and amused. The Hoffman boys used to laugh. You used to laugh. Now the concept seems foreign. What would it even take to make you laugh now? The thought is almost disturbing. Physical comfort memories torture you constantly. You remember what it felt like to lie in an actual bed. Soft mattress, clean sheets, a pillow that supported your head, being warm but not too warm, the safety of walls and a locked door. Sleep that actually restored you instead of just being an exhausted collapse. You remember your family. Faces so clear in your memory you could draw them. Your mother's voice, your brother's laugh, your cousin's terrible jokes. These people existed. They loved you and you loved them. You don't know if they still exist. The not knowing is its own kind of hell. School memories come back. Sitting at a desk learning things that seemed important. Tests and homework and projects. Teachers explaining concepts. The bell ringing. The routine of education. You were building toward a future, learning skills for a career, planning a life. All of that is meaningless now. You remember being safe, walking down streets without checking for snipers or unexploded ordnance, entering buildings without assessing their structural stability, sleeping without worrying about bombardment. Safety as a default state rather than a rare luxury. The memory of music haunts you. The radio playing, someone singing, the Hoffman boy playing piano. Music existed for beauty and enjoyment. Now the only sounds are destruction and survival. You try to remember melodies, but they slip away. Your traumatized mind can't hold on to beauty. You remember hope, not the desperate, irrational hope of survival, the casual hope of plans and dreams. You were going to do things, be someone, have a life. You made plans for next year without questioning whether there would be a next year. The confidence of normalcy. You remember kindness given freely, someone holding a door open, a smile from a stranger, small courtesies that made life pleasant, help offered without expectation of trade, generosity because people had enough to be generous. Those tiny moments of human decency that seemed unremarkable then and impossible now. You remember the first bomb, how shocking it was, how everyone panicked, how it seemed like an aberration, a mistake. Surely this wasn't the start of something. Surely someone would stop this. The innocence of thinking the bombing was temporary. The naive belief that sanity would prevail. The memories of normal problems are almost funny now. You worried about being late for work, about what people thought of you, about your appearance, about social awkwardness. Problems that seemed so important and were actually nothing. You'd give anything to have those problems back. You remember colors. The town before the bombing had color. Painted buildings, flower boxes in windows, bright awnings over shops, green trees, blue sky. Now everything is gray and brown and black. The color has been literally bombed out of the world. These memories are becoming less sharp. You notice it happening and it terrifies you. The details are fading. Faces are less clear. Sounds are more muffled. Your brain is either protecting you from the pain of contrast or it's being damaged by the constant stress. Either way, you're losing your past even as you live through this nightmare present. Chapter 28. The dreams that haunt your sleep. Sleep is supposed to be an escape, a refuge from the waking nightmare. But your dreams have become extensions of the horror, twisted reflections of reality that offer no rest at all. Every night when you close your eyes, if you manage to close them at all, your subconscious takes over and creates fresh torments. Sometimes the dreams are memories, perfect recreations of traumatic moments played back with brutal clarity. The moment the first bomb hit your street, the sound it made, the way the air pressure changed, the screaming. Your brain forces you to relive it frame by frame. Other times the dreams are distortions. You're back in your house before the bombing, but something is wrong. The walls are made of paper. The furniture is melting. Your family is there, but their faces are wrong, stretched and distorted. You try to warn them about the bombs, but your voice doesn't work. They can't hear you and you can't save them, and then the bombs come and you watch them die again. The running dreams are constant. You're fleeing from something. Soldiers or bombs or collapsing buildings or something nameless. Your legs won't work properly. You're running through mud or your feet are made of lead. The threat gets closer and closer and you can't escape no matter how hard you try. You wake up exhausted from the effort of running in your sleep. Sometimes you dream you're eating proper meals, restaurant food, holiday dinners. Your mother's cooking. The food is so real you can taste it. You're chewing and swallowing and finally satisfying the hunger. Then you wake up and the hunger is still there, worse somehow because the dream reminded you what satisfaction felt like. The drowning dreams started after a particularly bad bout of water scarcity. You dream you're surrounded by water but can't drink it. Or you're drinking but your thirst never stops. Or water is pouring into the basement and you're trapped and drowning while everyone around you sleeps. You wake up gasping, throat raw with thirst. Anna has nightmares about her baby. She wakes up crying, reaching for an infant that isn't there. Sometimes she wakes up convinced the baby is still alive and looks around desperately before reality crashes back. The cruelty of her brain giving her those few seconds of hope before taking it away is almost worse than the constant grief. The Hoffman boys both have nightmares that make them cry out in their sleep. The younger one, before the fever got really bad, would wake up screaming about fire, about being trapped in flames. His brother would hold him and rock him like their mother used to until he calmed down enough to sleep again. Dr. Fisher says he dreams about all the people he couldn't save. Not just here in the basement but throughout his long career as a doctor. They appear to him and ask why he let them die. He tells them he tried. He did everything he could. But in the dream they don't believe him, and he wakes up carrying their accusations into his waking hours. You have a recurring dream about being buried alive. The building collapses and you're trapped under rubble. You can't move, can't breathe, can't see. Just darkness and weight and the knowledge that nobody is coming to dig you out. You'll die slowly in the dark. This dream is so common that sometimes you wake up and have to convince yourself you can actually move your limbs. The contrast dreams are the cruelest. You dream about the town as it used to be. Intact buildings, people going about normal lives, children playing, shops open, everything peaceful and ordinary. The dream is so vivid and real that for those few minutes of sleep, you believe the bombing never happened. Then you wake up in the basement and the crash back to reality is devastating. Sometimes the dreams mix time periods in confusing ways. You're in the bombed-out town, but your family from before is there acting like everything is normal. Or you're back in your old life, but you can see the destruction coming and nobody will listen to your warnings. Your brain can't separate before and after anymore. Mrs. Kowalski used to talk about her dreams before she died. She dreamed about her husband every night. He would come to her and they would talk like he was still alive. She preferred sleep to waking because in sleep she could be with him. When she died, maybe it was a relief. Maybe death was just going permanently to sleep where he was waiting. The dreams about the future are rare but disturbing. You dream about after the war, about trying to return to normal life. But in the dreams you can't readjust. You're at a restaurant and everyone is eating normally but you're hoarding food. You're in a building and you keep checking the ceiling for cracks. You can't trust that safety is real. These dreams suggest your brain knows that even if you survive, you'll never really escape this. Nightmares about unexploded ordnance are common for everyone. You dream you step on something and hear a click. That moment of realization before the explosion. Sometimes the dream lets you explode. Sometimes it freezes you in that moment of knowing forever. Both versions are terrible. You have dreams where you find food or water and you're so happy. You're eating and drinking and finally satisfied. Then you realize it's a dream and you try desperately to stay asleep, to keep experiencing this satisfaction. But the awareness that it's a dream always wakes you up and you're back to hunger and thirst and disappointment. The guilt dreams are their own special torture. You dream about the people who died. Joseph, Mrs. Kowalski, Anna's baby, others you encountered briefly. In the dreams they're alive and accusing you. Why did you survive when they didn't? What makes you more deserving of life? Why didn't you save them? You wake up carrying guilt for deaths that weren't your fault but feel like they were. Sometimes you don't dream at all. Just black, empty nothing. Those nights are actually worse because you wake up feeling like you've been dead for 8 hours. No rest, no escape, just void. Your body was unconscious but your mind was nowhere and it leaves you feeling hollow. The worst part is that the dreams are becoming your reality and reality is becoming dreamlike. Sometimes during the day you're not sure if you're awake or asleep, if this is real or another nightmare. The line between dream and reality has eroded so much that you exist in a constant state of uncertainty about which side you're on. Sleep is supposed to restore you, supposed to give your mind and body time to heal. But here, sleep is just another battlefield. Another place where you're not safe. Another source of trauma. You go to sleep exhausted and wake up exhausted. There is no rest. There is only different forms of consciousness, all of them terrible. Chapter 29. The animals that adapted. Before the bombing, this town had normal animal life. People had pets. Dogs and cats living in homes. Birds nested in trees. Pigeons in the square. Normal urban animals going about their normal lives. The bombing changed them just like it changed everything else. The first thing you notice is the rats. They're everywhere now. Massive rats grown fat on the abundance of food sources that nobody wants to think about too carefully. They've lost their fear of humans. They've learned that humans here are weak and not a threat. You've had rats walk right past you without even hurrying. They own this town now. The rats are bold enough to be dangerous. They'll steal food right from your hands if you're not careful. They bite if cornered. Dr. Fisher treated someone 2 buildings over for a rat bite that got infected and killed them. Rat-borne diseases are a real concern. Typhus, plague, leptospirosis, all thriving in these conditions. You've seen rats hunting in packs, actually coordinating to take down pigeons or to break into storage areas. They've evolved survival strategies for this environment faster than the humans have. They're the success story of the bombed-out town, the species that's thriving while everything else dies. The birds are still here but different. The ones that survived have learned to nest in the ruins. Pigeons roost in collapsed buildings. Crows perch on shattered walls. They've adapted to the new landscape. They're also fat from feeding on the dead. Every corpse in the street attracts clouds of crows. You've learned to identify where bodies are by watching where the crows congregate. The crows are intelligent enough to be disturbing. They watch you. They follow you sometimes. They remember faces. If you throw a rock at one, its friends will remember and harass you for days. They've learned that humans in this town are dying and dying humans become food. You've caught them watching you with what feels like anticipation. Waiting. Dogs used to be pets here. Loyal companions. Family members. The bombing killed most of them or they fled. The ones that remained have gone feral. You see them sometimes, packs of former pets now wild again. They're cautious around humans but desperate enough to be dangerous. A pack of feral dogs is one more thing to worry about when venturing outside. You saw someone try to befriend one of the feral dogs last week, offering it food, talking softly. The dog let them get close, then bit their hand and ran off with the food. The bite got infected. The person got septic. They died 3 days later. Trust is extinct here, even between species that used to love each other. Cats survived better than dogs in some ways. They're more independent, better hunters. You see them occasionally, thin and wary, hunting the rats. There's a kind of ecological balance. The rats feed on the dead. The cats feed on the rats. Nature finds a way even in destruction. There's a cat that lives somewhere near your basement. You hear it sometimes at night, yowling, fighting with other cats. Once you saw it in daylight. It was missing an ear and half its tail, covered in scars, but alive, surviving. You felt a strange kinship with that damaged cat still fighting to live another day. The insects have exploded in population. Flies everywhere, as mentioned, but also beetles and cockroaches and other things that thrive on decay. The town has become an insect paradise. They crawl over everything. You've given up trying to keep them away. They're part of life now. Mosquitoes breed in the stagnant water that collects in bomb craters and collapsed basements. They swarm at dusk, biting everything that moves. Mosquito-borne diseases are another concern. Malaria, dengue fever. As if there weren't enough ways to die already. You've seen behavior changes in the animals. They're more aggressive, more desperate, more willing to take risks. A bird that would have flown away from humans before will now hold its ground over a scrap of food. A rat will bare its teeth and stand its ground instead of running. Hunger has made everything more dangerous. The animal sounds at night are different now. Not the peaceful sounds of a normal town. Aggressive sounds. Fighting. Hunting. Dying. The rats squeak and squeal as they battle over territory. The feral dogs howl. The cats yowl. It's a soundtrack of animal desperation matching the human desperation. Sometimes you find animal corpses. Dead rats. Dead birds. Dead cats. They're dying from the same things killing humans. Starvation. Disease. Injuries. The bombing didn't discriminate. It created hell for every living thing within its radius. There are no more songbirds. The small, beautiful birds that used to fill the air with music are gone, dead or fled to safer places. The only birds left are scavengers. Crows and ravens and gulls that can eat anything. Even beauty has been bombed out of the ecosystem. You wonder if the animals understand what happened. Do they remember before? Do the feral dogs remember being pets? Do they miss their humans? Or have they adapted so completely that their previous lives are forgotten? Maybe forgetting is a gift. Maybe it's easier to be an animal in this situation because they don't carry the weight of memory. The Hoffman boys sometimes throw rocks at the rats. Not to hunt them, though you've all discussed eating rats if it comes to that. Just to express anger. To hurt something. To fight back against at least one of the things making life miserable. The rats barely react anymore. They've learned that rocks miss more than they hit. There's a dark ecology forming in the ruins. Food chain based on death. Bodies feed rats. Rats feed cats and crows. Everything feeds on everything else. Humans are part of this food chain now. Not at the top anymore. Just another species struggling to survive in the wasteland. Chapter 30. The time that disappeared. You've lost track of time in a way that's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't lived through it. Time used to be measured and marked. Clocks and calendars and schedules. Now time is a formless thing that passes without meaning or measurement. You don't know what day of the week it is. The concept of Monday versus Saturday is meaningless when every day is identical. Wake up in darkness. Try to find food and water. Try to stay warm. Try not to die. Sleep. Repeat. Days blur together into one continuous existence. You think it's November, but you're not completely sure. The cold suggests late fall or early winter, but you've lost track of when the seasons changed. Was there a crisp autumn? When did the leaves fall? You don't remember autumn happening. Summer ended and suddenly it was cold. The bombing happened 3 months ago, or 4 months, or maybe 5. You know it was summer when it started because you remember the heat. Now it's cold, but the exact amount of time that passed is uncertain. Dr. Fisher has been trying to keep track, but even he admits his count might be off. Watches don't matter when time doesn't matter. You found that watch last week and you can hear it ticking, but you never check what time it says. What difference does it make if it's 3 in the afternoon or 8 in the evening? There are no appointments to keep. No schedule to follow. The watch measures something that no longer exists. Day and night still exist, but they've lost their structure. You wake up at irregular times. Sleep at irregular times. Sometimes you're awake for what feels like 2 days straight because sleep won't come. Sometimes you sleep for what might be 16 hours because your body just shuts down. There's no routine to impose order on time. The darkness makes time feel longer. Night in the basement seems endless. You lie there in the dark and minutes feel like hours. You're convinced you've been awake all night when maybe only 2 hours have passed. Or you think 15 minutes have gone by and it's been 3 hours. Time stretches and compresses randomly. You've noticed everyone's sense of time is different. Mrs. Kowalski used to insist she'd been in the basement for 6 months. Dr. Fisher would gently correct her. 2 months. She'd argue. She was certain. Her subjective experience of time had expanded so much that 2 months felt like 6. Time is relative when you're suffering. The lack of routine destroys time sense. In normal life, time is marked by events. Breakfast, work, lunch, dinner, bedtime. These markers gave structure to days. Here there are no markers. You eat when food is available. You sleep when exhaustion overcomes you. Nothing marks 1 hour as different from another. Seasonal markers help a bit. You know summer is over because it's cold. You know winter is coming because it's getting colder. But without a calendar, without holidays, without seasonal activities, the seasons are just weather changes. They don't mark time passage in any meaningful way. Sometimes you try to calculate how long you've been here. The Hoffman boys arrived 2 weeks after the main bombing. Joseph died 3 weeks after that. Or was it 4? Mrs. Kowalski died recently, but recently could mean yesterday or last week. The events blur together without timestamps. Dr. Fisher's journal is the closest thing to a record, but even that has gaps. Days when he was too tired or sick to write. Days when nothing happened worth recording. Days that just disappeared into the void of identical suffering. His journal has date estimates, but they're marked with question marks. You've noticed that traumatic events mark time better than normal ones. You remember the day Joseph died more clearly than the 20 days before it. The day Anna's baby died is a sharp marker. The bombing itself is day zero that everything else references. But the quiet days of slow suffering all blend together. The concept of the future has almost disappeared. Future requires time to be moving forward toward something. But when every day is the same desperate survival, there's no sense of progression. No sense that today is closer to something than yesterday was. You exist in an eternal present that might never end. Past is becoming fuzzy too. Your memories of before the bombing are losing their temporal structure. You remember events, but not when they happened. Was that birthday party last year or 3 years ago? When did you last see your mother? Time markers that used to be clear are fading. The waiting makes time weird. You're constantly waiting. Waiting for food to be found. Waiting for water. Waiting for the next bombing. Waiting for rescue. Waiting for death. Waiting is passive and eternal, and it makes time feel stopped. Like you're frozen in an endless moment of anticipation. You catch yourself thinking things like, "I've been cold forever," or "I've always been hungry," even though you know logically that's not true. But the subjective experience of duration has overridden logical knowledge. This state feels eternal even though it's temporary. Your brain has accepted this as permanent. Age has lost meaning. You're 25 years old, but that number is just data. It doesn't mean anything about who you are or what stage of life you're in. The Hoffman boys are teenagers, but they're ancient in experience. Mrs. Kowalski was elderly, but she died young. Age and time are disconnected. Sometimes you wonder if you're aging normally. The stress might be aging you faster. Or maybe time really is passing differently here. Maybe you've been in this basement for years and you just don't realize it. Maybe you're actually 45 now. How would you know? There are no mirrors, no calendars, no objective measures. The loss of time creates a kind of psychological imprisonment worse than the physical one. You're trapped not just in this basement, but in an eternal present moment. No past to return to because memories are fading. No future to work toward because there's no sense of progress. Just now. Always now. Forever now. The only time that matters is immediate time. The next hour. The next day if you're optimistic. Thinking beyond that is pointless because there's no framework to think within. Long-term planning requires believing in long-term time, and that belief is dead. When rescue finally comes, one of the first questions they ask is, "How long have you been here?" Nobody in your basement can answer definitively. 3 months, maybe. For Dr. Fisher's journal says 87 days, but he's not sure. 87 days that felt like 87 years. Time that swallowed you and refused to let you mark its passage. Conclusion. So, how's your day been? Rough commute? Annoying coworker? Internet running slow? Let me put that in perspective for you. You've just experienced 3 months in a bombed-out town. 3 months of living in a basement with 7 other people. 3 months of eating scraps and drinking contaminated water. 3 months of constant fear, constant cold, constant hunger. 3 months of watching people die and wondering if you're next. You experienced what it's like when all the things you take for granted disappear. No running water, no electricity, no food security, no medical care, no safety, no privacy, no comfort, no future beyond surviving today. You learned that human beings can endure almost anything if they have to, that you're stronger than you think but also more fragile. That civilization is a thin veneer that disappears quickly when bombs start falling. That hope persists even when logic says it shouldn't. But here's the wildest part. This happened. Not to you, obviously. You're reading this from somewhere comfortable and safe. But this happened to real people in real towns throughout history. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Bosnia, Iraq, Syria, Ukraine. Different wars, different times, but the same fundamental horror of being a civilian trapped in a war zone. The numbers are staggering. World War II alone saw over 60 million deaths. Countless more were displaced, traumatized, forever changed. Every one of those people had a story like this. Every one of them survived day by day in conditions that shouldn't be survivable. Or they didn't survive and became statistics in history books. The people you met in this story are composites based on real accounts. Mrs. Kowalski and her prayers. The Hoffman boys and their lost childhoods. Anna and her starving baby. Dr. Fisher and his journal. These people existed. Maybe not with these exact names, but they existed in every bombed-out town throughout the war. The details are real. The unexploded ordnance. The contaminated water. The cold. The hunger. The diseases. The death. All of it documented in survivor accounts and historical records. This isn't fiction. It's history told from the perspective you rarely see. And it's still happening. Right now, somewhere in the world, there are people living in bombed-out towns, hiding in basements, scavenging for food, drinking questionable water, watching their children die from preventable diseases. The names change, the locations change, but the fundamental horror remains constant. So tonight, when you go to sleep in your bed with your clean sheets, when you wake up tomorrow and take a hot shower, when you eat breakfast from your refrigerator and drink clean water from your tap, maybe say a quiet thank you. Thank you that you're not in a basement in a bombed-out town. Thank you that your biggest problems are traffic and deadlines and bills. And maybe, just maybe, remember that civilization is fragile. That the distance between your comfortable life and that basement is smaller than you think. That it takes just one war, one wrong political decision, one cascade of events to turn any town into ruins and ruins into nightmares. The people who survived bombed-out towns didn't think it could happen to them either. They went to sleep in normal towns with normal problems and woke up in hell. They weren't special or prepared or trained for survival. They were just people, like you. So cherish what you have. Appreciate the mundane miracle of safety and stability. And remember the millions who didn't have it, who don't have it, who never will. Sleep well tonight, in your bed, in your home, in your peaceful town, and be grateful you can.